Christmas was supposed to be perfect that year. My husband Marcus had just returned from a 6-month deployment at Fort Bragg, and our 8-month-old daughter Sophia was finally old enough to enjoy the holiday magic. I spent weeks preparing our home hanging twinkling lights and setting up the most beautiful tree we had ever had. Marcus helped me cook a feast that would make my grandmother proud. Looking at my little family gathered around our dining table, I thought nothing could ruin this moment. But I should have known better. My sister Jessica had always been the type to speak her mind, and lately, her opinions about my parenting had become increasingly harsh. Still, it was Christmas, and I believed family meant everything. Before I tell you about that Christmas dinner, please let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you love real family stories like this one. I promise you what happened next will completely change how you think about family boundaries forever. The preparation for Christmas had consumed my entire December. I wanted everything to be absolutely perfect for Marcus's homecoming and Sophia's first real Christmas. Our little ranch house in North Carolina was transformed into a winter wonderland with garland draped along every doorframe and the scent of cinnamon candles filling every room. Marcus, still adjusting to civilian life after months of military routine, threw himself into helping me cook. His precise, methodical approach to following recipes reminded me exactly why I fell in love with this disciplined, caring man. Sophia had grown so much during Marcus's deployment. She was crawling everywhere now, pulling herself up on furniture, and had just started saying her first words. Dada and Mama were her favorites, and watching Marcus's face light up every time she babbled those sounds made my heart swell. I was so excited for my family to see how much she had developed and to witness the bond between father and daughter that had grown even stronger since his return. My family had always been close, though not without its complications. My parents, Robert and Linda, were the kind of grandparents who melted at every smile and giggle from Sophia. They lived just 20 minutes away and had been incredible support during Marcus's deployment. My younger brother Kyle, 25, and still figuring out his life, was bringing his girlfriend Sarah, a sweet kindergarten teacher, who always brought thoughtful gifts. Then there was Jessica, my older sister by 3 years, who worked as a paralegal at a prestigious law firm downtown. Jessica had always been the family perfectionist, the one who graduated summa cum laude, the one who never seemed to make mistakes. She also never hesitated to point out when she thought others were making them. The first warning signs appeared the moment Jessica walked through our front door that evening. She arrived 30 minutes late without calling her designer coat still perfectly pressed, despite the December chill. While everyone else greeted Marcus with genuine warmth and thanked him for his service, Jessica offered only a brief nod and a comment about how military schedules must be hard to adjust to. I watched Marcus's jaw tighten slightly, but he responded with his usual grace and politeness. As I carried Sophia around introducing her to the family she had not seen since Thanksgiving, Jessica's commentary began immediately. She looks heavier than last time, Adriana. Are you sure you are not overfeeding her? The comment stung, but I brushed it off. Sophia was a healthy, happy baby, and our pediatrician had praised her growth at every appointment. When Jessica criticized my Christmas decorations as a bit much, do not you think? I forced a smile and changed the subject. I was determined not to let her negativity ruin our first Christmas together as a complete family. Dinner began beautifully. The golden turkey I had spent hours preparing was perfectly moist, the mashed potatoes were creamy, and the cranberry sauce had just the right balance of tart and sweet. My parents complimented every dish, and Kyle could not stop raving about the stuffing. Even Sarah, who was usually quiet around my family, was animated and engaging. Marcus shared stories from his deployment, carefully avoiding classified details, but painting pictures of the camaraderie and challenges of military life that had everyone listening intently. Sophia sat in her high chair between Marcus and me, playing with soft toys and babbling happily. Every time she made a sound or reached for someone, the table erupted in delighted laughter. She was the perfect dinner companion, charming everyone with her bright eyes and infectious giggles. Everyone except Jessica, who seemed increasingly irritated by the attention Sophia was receiving. As the evening progressed, Jessica's comments became sharper and more frequent. She questioned every aspect of my parenting, from the way I cut Sophia's food to the schedule I kept for her naps. "You are making that child too dependent on you, Adriana," she declared, while I helped Sophia with a piece of soft sweet potato. "She should be feeding herself completely by now. You are going to create problems later." When Marcus gently mentioned that babies develop at their own pace, and Sophia was actually ahead in many areas, Jessica turned her attention to him. "Well, you have not been here for most of it, have you? Hard to know what is normal when you are away for months at a time." The table fell silent for a moment. Even Kyle, who usually tried to lighten tense moments with jokes, seemed unsure how to respond. Marcus maintained his composure, simply nodding and saying that he was grateful to be home now. But Jessica was not finished. As the wine flowed, her filter seemed to disappear entirely. She began criticizing decisions Marcus and I had made as parents, decisions we had carefully researched and discussed. She disapproved of our choice to breastfeed past 6 months, calling it impractical and unnecessary. She questioned our decision to let Sophia sleep in our room, claiming we were setting up bad habits that would haunt us for years. Each comment felt like a small knife carefully placed to inflict maximum doubt. My parents tried repeatedly to change the subject, asking about Marcus's transition back to civilian work and complimenting the meal I had prepared. But Jessica seemed determined to dominate the conversation with her unsolicited parenting advice. The worst part was watching Marcus's face as he listened to her implications that he was an absent father who did not understand his own daughter's needs. He had sacrificed so much serving our country, and coming home to this kind of treatment was the last thing he deserved. The turning point came when Sophia, who had been such a good baby all evening, began to get fussy. It was past her usual bedtime, and despite all the exciting new faces and sounds, she was getting tired. Her babbling turned to whimpering, and then to full crying. I immediately stood to comfort her, lifting her from the high chair and rocking her gently. "I am so sorry, everyone. She is just tired. It has been a long day for her." Jessica's reaction was swift and harsh. "For crying out loud, Adriana, why did you not put her to bed earlier?" "This is exactly what I mean about setting boundaries. You are disrupting everyone's dinner because you cannot stick to a schedule." Her voice was loud enough to startle Sophia, who cried harder. "Can you please take her to another room? Some of us are trying to enjoy our meal." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. Here I was in my own home being told how to handle my own child by someone who had never had children of her own. I tried to explain that babies sometimes have difficult moments, especially during exciting events, but Jessica cut me off. "That is exactly the problem, Adriana. You always have an excuse. You never just deal with the situation." Marcus, seeing my distress, stood and gently took Sophia from my arms. "Let me try," he said softly. His voice had that calm, commanding quality. I had fallen in love with the same tone that had led soldiers through difficult missions. As he held our daughter close and began swaying gently, Sophia's cries gradually subsided. He hummed a soft melody I recognized from when he sang her to sleep, and within minutes she was calm and content in his arms. Instead of appreciating Marcus's gentle success with our daughter, Jessica seemed even more annoyed. "Great, so now the whole dinner is about the baby. This is exactly what happens when people cannot set appropriate boundaries with children." Kyle finally spoke up, suggesting that maybe we should all just enjoy the fact that Sophia was happy now, but Jessica waved him off dismissively. Marcus carefully placed Sophia on the soft rug near our Christmas tree, where her favorite toys were scattered. She immediately began crawling toward the twinkling lights, fascinated by the colors and movement. For a few precious minutes, peace returned to our dining room. Conversation resumed, though more quietly than before, and I began to hope we could salvage the rest of the evening. But Sophia, being an 8-month-old baby, was naturally curious about everything around her. She crawled over to where Jessica sat, pulled herself up on the table leg, and looked up at her aunt with those big, innocent eyes that usually melted hearts. Instead of the smile I expected, Jessica's face showed clear irritation. Seriously? Now she is going to climb all over the furniture? Adriana, you really need to control your child. I was about to get up when Jessica did something that changed everything. Without warning, without any build-up, she reached down and slapped Sophia across the face. The sound rang through our dining room like a gunshot. Sophia, shocked and hurt, fell backward onto her diaper and let out a scream unlike anything I had ever heard from her. It was not just crying. It was the sound of betrayal, of pain, of complete confusion about why someone would hurt her. The entire room fell into stunned silence, except for Sophia's heartbroken sobs. I jumped from my chair and scooped my baby into my arms, my hands shaking as I checked her face for marks. Her little cheek was red, and her eyes were wide with terror and confusion. "Jessica!" I screamed. "What did you just do? You just hit my baby!" Jessica, instead of showing any remorse or shock at her own actions, leaned back in her chair with an expression of satisfaction. She needed to learn some discipline. You obviously are not going to teach her boundaries, so someone had to. Children need to understand that they cannot just do whatever they want. I stared at my sister in complete disbelief. She is 8 months old. She is a baby? You just hit my baby. My voice was getting higher and more frantic as the reality of what had happened sank in. This was not a stranger on the street. This was my sister, someone who was supposed to love and protect Sophia, someone I had trusted completely. "You are completely overreacting, Adriana," Jessica said, taking another sip of her wine as if nothing significant had happened. "It was barely a tap. She is fine. You are being way too dramatic about this. This is exactly what I mean about you being too soft with her. Children need firm boundaries, and sometimes that means a little physical correction." I looked around the table, desperately expecting anyone to share my outrage and horror. But what I saw made my heart sink even further. My parents sat frozen in their chairs, their faces pale, but their mouths silent. Kyle was staring down at his plate, his hands clenched in his lap, while Sarah looked between him and Jessica, with obvious discomfort, but said nothing. Even my parents, Sophia's own grandparents, seemed unable to find their voices. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Sophia continued to sob in my arms, and I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. Here was my family, the people who were supposed to support me unconditionally, and they were sitting there like statues while my sister defended hitting my baby. Then Marcus stood up. He rose slowly from his chair, all 6 feet 2 inches of him, unfolding with the controlled precision that came from years of military training. His face was completely calm, which somehow made him seem more intimidating than if he had been yelling. The silence in the room became even more profound as everyone turned to look at him. "Jessica," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying absolute authority. Jessica looked up at him with a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. "What?" she snapped, though I could hear a slight tremor in her voice. Marcus looked directly into her eyes, and when he spoke, every word was clear and final. "Get out!" Jessica laughed, though it sounded forced and nervous. "Excuse me, I am sorry, but I am in my parents' house, not yours. You do not get to tell me what to do here." Marcus did not raise his voice or change his expression. If anything, his tone became even more controlled. "I said, get out, now." The authority in his voice was unmistakable. This was not a request or a suggestion. It was an order from someone accustomed to being obeyed. Jessica looked around the table, clearly expecting someone to come to her defense, or at least question Marcus's right to ask her to leave. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice now carrying a note of desperation. "Are you going to let him talk to me like this? In your own home? I am your daughter?" "My father." Robert slowly pushed back from the table and stood up. His voice was quiet but firm. "Jessica, you need to leave. What you did was wrong, and I think you should go home and think about your actions tonight." My mother, Linda, had tears streaming down her face as she nodded in agreement. "Honey, you hit our grandbaby. That is not acceptable no matter what your justifications are. I think it is best if you go." Jessica's face went through a series of emotions: shock, anger, disbelief, and finally, a kind of desperate fury. "I cannot believe this," she said, standing up so quickly that her chair nearly toppled backward. "I try to help you raise that child properly, and this is what I get. You are all going to regret this when she grows up spoiled and undisciplined, because none of you had the backbone to set boundaries." Marcus took a step toward her, and his voice dropped even lower. "You put your hands on my daughter. You will leave this house now, or I will escort you out myself. Your choice." There was something in Marcus's tone and posture that made it clear this was not an empty threat. This was a man who had dealt with dangerous situations in foreign countries, who had been trained to neutralize threats efficiently and without hesitation. Jessica seemed to finally understand that she had crossed a line from which there was no return. She grabbed her purse and coat with jerky, angry movements. As she headed toward the door, she turned back one final time. "You people are making a huge mistake. When that child grows up to be a spoiled brat who cannot function in the real world, remember this moment. Remember that someone tried to help you, and you threw it away." The front door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the windows, and then there was silence again. But this time, the silence felt different. It was not the shocked, uncomfortable quiet from before. It was the peaceful quiet that comes after a storm has passed. The moments immediately following Jessica's departure were filled with a complex mixture of relief and shock. I sat holding Sophia, who had finally stopped crying and was now hiccuping softly against my shoulder. The red mark on her cheek was already beginning to fade, but the memory of seeing my sister's hand strike my baby would be burned into my mind forever. My parents were the first to speak, both of them rushing over to apologize profusely. "Adriana, honey, we are so sorry," my mother said, her voice thick with tears. "We should have said something immediately. We were just so shocked that we did not know how to react. What Jessica did was completely unacceptable." My father nodded emphatically, reaching out to gently stroke Sophia's hair. "There is no excuse for hitting a child, especially not a baby. I am ashamed that we sat there in silence. We should have stood up for you and Sophia right away." Kyle and Sarah also approached, offering their own apologies and support. Kyle admitted something that surprised me. "I have been afraid of Jessica since we were kids. She always had this way of making everyone feel like they were wrong, and she was right no matter what the situation was. I should have learned to stand up to her years ago." Marcus, meanwhile, had been quietly checking the locks on our doors and windows. When I asked him why, he explained that in his experience, people who lashed out like Jessica had done sometimes came back when they had time to fuel their anger further. "I do not think she will," he said, "but I want to make sure you and Sophia are safe." As we cleaned up the remnants of our interrupted Christmas dinner, I found myself asking the question that had been haunting me since the moment Jessica raised her hand to Sophia. How did I not see this coming? How did I miss that my own sister was capable of hitting a baby? Marcus sat down next to me on the couch, pulling both Sophia and me into his arms. "You could not have known," he said gently. "People show you who they really are in crisis moments. Tonight, Jessica showed us who she really is, and so did everyone else in this room. Your parents stood up for their granddaughter once they got over their shock. Kyle found his voice. And you protected our daughter like the fierce mama bear you are." The days that followed were difficult in ways I had not expected. Jessica sent a series of text messages, not apologizing, but demanding that Marcus apologize to her for humiliating her in front of the family. She claimed that she had been trying to help and that we were all being too sensitive about what she called a minor correction. Each message revealed more clearly that she felt no remorse for her actions and truly believed she had been in the right. My parents tried to mediate at first, hoping for some kind of reconciliation, but Jessica's continued justifications for hitting Sophia made it clear that she was not going to acknowledge any wrongdoing. After 2 weeks of increasingly hostile messages, we made the decision to cut off contact entirely, unless and until Jessica could genuinely apologize and show that she understood why her actions were wrong. Marcus helped me process the complex emotions I was experiencing. I felt angry, of course, but also guilty for not protecting Sophia, better confused about how I had misjudged my sister so completely, and sad about the loss of a family relationship I had valued despite its challenges. "It is normal to grieve," Marcus told me. "You are not just losing Jessica as she was, you are losing the Jessica you thought she was the sister you believed her to be." 3 months after that Christmas dinner, we learned through my parents that Jessica had gotten a job offer in Seattle and had decided to move across the country. She left without saying goodbye to anyone in the family, claiming that we had all chosen sides against her and that she needed to start fresh somewhere people would appreciate her honesty and directness. The strange thing was, once the initial sadness passed, I found myself feeling lighter than I had in years. I had not realized how much mental and emotional energy I had been spending trying to manage Jessica's criticism and judgment. Without her constant commentary on my parenting choices, I felt more confident and relaxed as a mother. Sophia, too, seemed to flourish in the more peaceful environment. My relationship with my parents actually improved significantly after Jessica's departure. They made extra efforts to be supportive and involved in Sophia's life, as if they were making up for their moment of paralysis during the crisis. Kyle also became much more engaged with our family, visiting more frequently and showing genuine interest in being a good uncle to Sophia. But perhaps the most significant change was in my marriage. Watching Marcus stand up for our family in that moment had revealed something about his character that I had known intellectually, but had never seen demonstrated so powerfully. He had not gotten angry or lost control. He had simply taken decisive action to protect what mattered most to him. That quiet strength gave me a sense of security I had never experienced before. As I thought back on that terrible Christmas dinner, I realized it had taught me several crucial lessons about family and boundaries. I learned that blood relationship does not give someone the right to harm or mistreat your children. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to remove toxic people from your life, even when they are family members. And I learned that the family you create through marriage and children can be every bit as important and deserving of protection as the family you were born into. Now, as I watch Sophia play at 3 years old, confident and happy, and completely unaware of that night, I am grateful for the lessons that painful evening taught me. She will never remember her aunt's slap, but she will grow up knowing that her parents will always stand up for her, that her safety and well-being come before anyone else's feelings, and that real family means people who love and protect each other unconditionally. Sometimes I wonder if Jessica ever thinks about that Christmas dinner, if she ever realizes what she lost when she chose anger over love, pride over family. But mostly, I just feel peace. Peace in knowing that I chose correctly, that Marcus and I built a family culture based on protection and respect, rather than criticism and control, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give your children is showing them that they deserve to be defended. The last time my mother mentioned Jessica, she was apparently doing well in her new job, but had not formed any close relationships in Seattle. "I think she is lonely," Mom said, but she still insists she was right about everything that happened. I felt sad for Jessica in that moment, sad that her need to be right had cost her the love of her family. But I also felt grateful that Sophia would grow up in a home where love meant protection, not control, and where family meant people who celebrated each other, instead of constantly finding fault. What happened that Christmas changed our family forever, but not in the way Jessica probably intended. Instead of teaching my daughter harsh discipline, it taught all of us about the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult, even when it costs us relationships we thought we valued. And that, I believe, was a far more valuable lesson than anything Jessica could have taught with her anger and her open palm. If you have ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members to protect your children, please share your story in the comments below. How did you handle situations where family members crossed lines you could not ignore? Please hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life family stories and share this video with anyone who might need to hear that it is okay to put your children's safety first, even when it means standing up to family. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that the love that matters most is the love that protects and cherishes what is most precious